Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, a good 2.5 millennia, to a world that was as vast as it was intensely hot and incredibly, meticulously green in unexpected places. You're about to immerse yourself in ancient Persia, a land of sprawling empires, majestic mountains, and searing deserts where the very concept of paradise found its earthly roots in the form of exquisite, painstakingly crafted gardens. Imagine for a moment the sun beating down on relentless ochre sands, the air shimmering with heat, and the distant call of a lone bird circling overhead. Then, a glimpse of emerald, a whisper of running water, and suddenly you're standing at the entrance to an oasis of meticulously organized calm. Tonight, we're journeying through the cool shade and fragrant air of these truly ancient Persian wonders. Just a heads up, without modern air conditioning or industrial strength hydration, you probably wouldn't survive a single Persian summer afternoon without wilting faster than a discarded lettuce leaf. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I'm curious. Tell me in the comments below, what time is it where you are, and where in the world are you tuning in from tonight? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're already feeling the temperature drop, aren't you? As you step over the low threshold, the immediate sense is one of profound relief. The oppressive glare of the desert gives way to dappled sunlight filtering through carefully positioned trees. It's like stepping into nature's perfectly air-conditioned botanical lounge. This wasn't accidental, of course. For the ancient Persians, creating these gardens wasn't just an aesthetic pursuit, it was an act of profound spiritual significance, a direct translation of their worldview into tangible, breathable beauty. These weren't wild, untamed spaces. Quite the opposite. They were symmetrical, ordered, and intensely deliberate, a microcosm of a perfected world within the broader chaos of existence. This pursuit of organized natural perfection is precisely what we understand today as the genesis of the Paradise Garden. The word itself, paradise, actually trickles down to us from the old Persian word paradisa, which literally meant a walled enclosure or orchard. Think about that for a second. Our entire concept of an idyllic, perfect afterlife, a blissful heaven, comes from the very real, very earthly efforts of ancient Persians to create protected, flourishing spaces within a largely inhospitable environment. It speaks volumes about the human longing for tranquility, doesn't it? If your vision of eternal bliss started with a good wall and some well-watered trees, you can bet your bottom dollar they knew what hardship felt like outside that enclosure. It makes sense, really. After all, if your daily commute involved wrestling sand dunes and arguing with camels, the idea of a gentle stream and a pomegranate tree would feel pretty close to divine intervention. Now, imagine yourself wandering further into this ancient paradisa. You can smell the subtle blend of roses, jasmine, and ripening fruit carried on a gentle breeze. This breeze, by the way, isn't just luck. It's part of the genius of the design, often funneled through the garden's layout to provide maximum cooling. You might even hear the soft gurgle of water channels, not rushing torrents, but tranquil trickles that are designed to soothe, not overpower. This careful orchestration of nature is what sets Persian gardens apart. They aren't simply patches of green, they are carefully engineered ecosystems designed to provide both aesthetic pleasure and essential spiritual solace. Historians still argue whether the earliest of these gardens were primarily agricultural, in purpose large enclosed orchards and hunting parks, if their symbolic and leisurely functions were present from the very beginning. However, it's clear that as the Achaemenid Empire expanded, these gardens became grander, reflecting the wealth and power of their rulers, yet always retaining that core essence of ordered calm. They were sanctuaries from the dusty roads, the political machinations, and, frankly, the incessant chatter that probably plagued ancient cities just as much as modern ones. You needed a break then, just like you need a break now, and for a Persian noble, the garden was their perfectly manicured, quiet retreat. The ancient Persian reverence for nature, intertwined with their spiritual beliefs, especially Zoroastrianism, which we'll delve into later, made these gardens more than just ornamental features. They were a sacred representation of creation, a testament to humanity's ability to bring order and life into a world perceived as sometimes wild and unforgiving. Think of them as living temples, where every plant, every drop of water, had its place and contributed to a larger, harmonious whole. This worldview encouraged an incredible amount of practical engineering skill, coupled with an almost poetic appreciation for balance and beauty. It's truly amazing what happens when necessity meets a divine blueprint, isn't it? Especially when that necessity involves staying hydrated and comfortable in 110-degree heat. As you meander along the path, perhaps you notice the precision of the pathways, usually made of crushed stone or tiles, neatly dividing the space. There's a deliberate separation, but also an integration, where elements like pools, pavilions, and planting beds are all meticulously arranged to contribute to the overall feeling of balance and contemplation. These spaces weren't just for looking at, they were designed for living. You might imagine a philosopher holding court under a shade tree, a poet composing verses by a gentle fountain, or even just someone like you, many centuries ago, simply taking a deep breath and letting the organized beauty wash over them after a long day of, well, whatever it was ancient Persians did to earn a living. Perhaps selling donkeys. Perhaps meticulously tallying tax revenues from newly conquered territories. Or, perhaps, just trying to avoid being conscripted into the army of Xerxes. Regardless, the garden was there to offer sweet, sweet relief. As your journey into this ancient Persian garden deepens, the reason for its very existence becomes profoundly clear. Step back outside the wall for a moment, and you're reminded of the stark reality that framed Persian life for millennia. Immense stretches of arid land. This wasn't a gentle dryness. This was harsh, unyielding desert and semi-desert. Precipitation was, and largely still is, a precious, fleeting commodity. The rivers that did exist, like the mighty Tigris and Euphrates to the west, or the Helmand to the east, were often distant or unpredictable in their flow. For a civilization that sought stability, permanence, and prosperity, the control and efficient distribution of water became not just an agricultural necessity, but an obsession, almost a divine mandate. It's hard to build an empire, let alone relax in one, if everyone is constantly parched and stressed. Imagine trying to explain your grand vision for universal postal service or standardized weights and measures when your subjects are hallucinating mirages in the desert. You'd get nowhere quickly. It's this challenging, often hostile environment that ironically spurred the innovation and sheer willpower to create these green havens. They weren't born of abundance, but of scarcity. Every drop of water, every successfully cultivated plant was a triumph against the natural elements. This isn't just a quirky tidbit, it's fundamental. If you visit modern Iran, you'll still encounter landscapes that look exactly as they would have 500 years ago. Vast, beautiful, but undeniably thirsty. This contrast is what makes the ancient Persian garden such a marvel. It's a testament to human ingenuity transforming the impossible into a reality, not unlike creating an entire water park in the middle of the Sahara, except instead of roller coasters, you get rose bushes and quiet reflection. And, let's be honest, which one sounds more relaxing before bed? The domestication of plants and the development of sophisticated irrigation techniques became crucial to the very survival and expansion of Persian society. While other ancient civilizations often grew up along major predictable rivers, think the Nile in Egypt or the Indus, the Persians mastered ways to capture, store and channel water across long distances, often through entirely unique systems we'll talk about very soon. They truly were the original pioneers of making barren land bloom, pushing the boundaries of agriculture beyond what was previously thought possible in such conditions. Historians still argue whether the invention of complex water systems, like qanats, primarily served vast imperial farming needs, or were a spontaneous, localized development that eventually scaled up to empire-wide use. Either way, necessity was definitely the mother of horticultural invention. Consider for a moment the average Persian citizen's life, not the emperor sipping a cool drink in his palace garden, but the farmer or villager. Their days were dictated by the sun and the precious availability of water. The vision of a flourishing garden, even a small domestic one, offered a symbolic escape, a private piece of paradise that represented hope, prosperity, and spiritual fulfillment. It was a tangible connection to the sacred. And let's be real, a good solid tree could also provide some excellent shade for an afternoon nap, which is universally appreciated by both emperors and peasants, though probably with different levels of linen count. This drive to create green spaces wasn't just about survival or food. It fed a deep-seated desire for beauty and order, perhaps because the outside world could feel so vast and unruly. The methodical planning required to bring water to dry lands, to cultivate delicate plants, and to maintain an entire garden against the odds, instilled a sense of control and harmony that was profoundly soothing. It's the kind of meticulous detail that would send modern-day landscape architects into raptures, probably followed by a request for several $1 million and a strong espresso. But for the ancient Persians, it was just their way of life, elevated to an art form. They weren't just building fancy backyards. They were making statements. Every tree planted, every channel dug, was an assertion of humanity's ability to shape its environment, not to dominate it aggressively, but to coax beauty and life from it with respect and understanding. This ethos carried through to their grand imperial gardens too, even as they became symbols of imperial power and vast resources. The underlying respect for nature, even in its most cultivated form, always remained. They understood that ultimate power lay not just in conquering people, but in bending the land to your will, in a quiet, nurturing way. Think about it. Controlling an army is one thing, but consistently getting roses to bloom in the middle of a desert? Now that's impressive. So, when you reflect on these gardens, remember they are born not of a gentle rainy clime, but from the searing crucible of the Persian plateau. The very harshness of the environment demanded the highest level of resourcefulness and engineering skill. It forced the Persians to truly innovate in their understanding of water management, plant science, and architectural design. It elevated the act of gardening from a mere chore to a noble, even spiritual pursuit. Imagine looking out at endless parched earth and dreaming up an intricate system that brings forth shimmering pools and vibrant blooms. That's the core of the Persian garden story. Dreams cultivated from drought, flourishing against the odds. It's a subtle reminder that sometimes the greatest beauty springs from the greatest challenges. If you just have the vision and the persistent digging. No, not that kind of digging. Just water management and careful horticulture. This struggle against aridity and the subsequent mastery of water for creation would become a defining characteristic of Persian civilization, leaving behind a legacy that stretched far beyond their own borders and time. You can trace lines of this ingenuity, the echoes of their gardens, in distant lands, but it all begins with the quiet determination to bring life-giving water to an often thirsty land, to create moments of shade and coolness where nature hadn't provided. With the parched desert outside still vivid in your mind, let's pivot and delve into the spiritual bedrock that truly made these gardens bloom, not just with water, but with profound meaning. For the ancient Persians, the desire to create these havens was deeply intertwined with their prevailing religion, Zoroastrianism. This was a monotheistic faith, predating Abrahamic religions by centuries, founded by the prophet Zarathustra, also known as Zoroaster. Unlike many other ancient faiths, Zoroastrianism held a uniquely optimistic and eco-conscious view of the world. Imagine a spiritual philosophy that didn't see the earth as something to be subdued or exploited, but rather as something divine, entrusted to humanity for careful cultivation. It's the kind of environmentalism you'd see in a modern-day eco-documentary, but without the irritating synthesized soundtrack. Zoroastrians believed in a cosmic struggle between two primary forces: Asha, representing truth, order, light, and creation, and Druj, embodying falsehood, disorder, darkness, and destruction. Think of it as the ultimate cosmic tug-of-war between good and evil, with humanity caught right in the middle. Your actions, your choices, tilted the balance one way or another. And guess what played a significant role in aligning with Asha? Why? Good governance, benevolent actions, and you guessed it, bringing life to the land. So, how does this relate to gardening? Directly. In Zoroastrian theology, paradise was seen as a perfected reflection of the world, a harmonious space where elements of nature, particularly water, trees, and light, existed in a state of purity and balance. The act of cultivating a garden, especially one that defied the arid landscape, was a profound religious duty. It was an emulation of the divine creative act, transforming disorder into order, dryness into fertility, and desolation into lushness. You weren't just growing a nice rose, you were participating in a sacred process, one petal at a time. It gives a whole new meaning to organic gardening, doesn't it? Though I doubt they had designated compost bins back then, just well-tended heaps of useful matter. This religious motivation meant that garden design was not just about aesthetics or pleasure, though it certainly delivered those in spades. It was about creating a microcosmic Asha, a living, breathing testament to righteousness and cosmic order. Water, in particular, was seen as supremely pure and sacred. Its careful channeling, its gentle flow through the garden, was a purification rite in itself, cleansing both the land and, metaphorically, the soul of the observer. Imagine meditating by a cool, clean stream that you know represents spiritual purity. Far more soothing than a flickering fluorescent light and the drone of office gossip. A fascinating, almost fringe tidbit tied to this is the Zoroastrian reverence for fire. While water nourished the gardens from below, the sun's fire nourished them from above, symbolizing Asha's life-giving light. Therefore, the strategic placement of plants to maximize or modulate sunlight was as crucial as water management. Even today, you'll find ancient fire temples, though few, as Islam became dominant, and symbols of light revered in the remnants of Zoroastrian culture. It makes sense, in a land where both light and water are blessings, that they'd be held in high regard. The fourfold structure that eventually came to define many Persian gardens, the Chahar Bagh design, which we'll discuss more in detail, believed by many scholars to be a direct physical manifestation of Zoroastrian cosmological principles, particularly the four elements: earth, air, fire, water, or the four directions, united at a central point, symbolizing the harmony of creation. Historians still argue whether the Chahar Bagh pattern evolved purely for practical irrigation and aesthetic reasons, or if its philosophical underpinnings were there from the earliest, smaller garden forms. The exact genesis might be debated, but its spiritual resonance certainly became undeniable over time. This religious philosophy promoted a deep respect for the natural world and discouraged pollution. Imagine being taught that fouling a stream or destroying a tree was not just wasteful, but a spiritual transgression. It placed an inherent value on environmental stewardship that was quite visionary for its time, contrasting sharply with many cultures that viewed nature as an untamed force to be battled. For the Zoroastrian, coaxing life from the desert wasn't conquest, it was communion. And let's be honest, Getting good quality organic produce usually feels like an act of faith even today. So, as you walk further, the garden's layout doesn't just feel orderly, it feels right. The precise geometry, the balanced distribution of water, the flourishing plant life, it all coalesces into a deliberate act of creation, mirroring a divine template. You might feel a gentle pull, an unspoken invitation to slow down, to breathe deeply, to simply exist in this meticulously cultivated representation of heaven on earth. It is, quite literally, a reflection of how the ancient Persians believed the world should be, a place of abundant life, order, and harmony. It truly elevates a picnic spot into a spiritual experience, which is handy because picnics are infinitely better when you also feel morally virtuous. This intertwining of faith, philosophy, and practical engineering truly differentiates the Persian approach to gardens. They were not simply places of luxury or leisure, but embodiments of a profound spiritual understanding, meticulously crafted to align with their deepest convictions about the nature of reality. A testament to a culture that saw the sacred in every leaf, every drop of water, and every precisely dug channel. A place where you could quite literally walk in your beliefs. Now that you understand the profound spiritual underpinnings of these green sanctuaries, it's time to expand our view from the merely philosophical to the truly monumental. Because while everyone probably yearned for their own little slice of Eden, it was the kings, especially figures like Cyrus the Great, who took the concept of the pari diaza and magnified it into an empire-spanning declaration of power and aesthetic glory. Imagine you're standing on the dry, dusty plain outside Pasargadae, the first dynastic capital of the Achaemenid Empire. This isn't just any city, it's a symbol of Cyrus's grand vision, and nestled within it lay what many consider to be the archetypal Persian garden. Cyrus the Great, the legendary founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire in the 6th century BCE, wasn't just a military genius, he was also a remarkable visionary who, it is believed, actively shaped the landscape around his residences. The ruins at Pasargadae show a meticulously planned royal precinct, and right at its heart lay the foundations of what appears to be the world's first true Persian garden that followed a geometric plan. This garden, an utterly revolutionary design for its time, demonstrates the direct hand of imperial ambition guiding the creation of natural beauty. It was an earthly representation of divine order, built for a ruler who saw himself as a benevolent agent of Asher, bringing order to the known world. It's safe to say, Cyrus didn't just garden in his spare time. He orchestrated monumental landscaping projects, the way others might build pyramids or conquer entire nations. Though, I bet his garden leave was far more impressive than anything HR offers today. These imperial gardens weren't just decorative, they were functional extensions of the royal court. Massive pleasure grounds designed to provide leisure, contemplation, and crucially, hunting opportunities. Many historians point to the Persian paradisos, from which our word paradise ultimately derives, as we mentioned earlier, as encompassing not just botanical arrangements, but also vast walled hunting parks, often stocked with exotic animals. Imagine trying to catch a gazelle, or even a smaller beast, among meticulously manicured flower beds and reflective pools. It sounds less like a hunt and more like an opulent game of hide and seek, probably ending with a perfectly chilled beverage under a shade tree rather than an exhausting chase. A quirky tidbit. Ancient texts describe some of these grand parks as housing imported species from across the vast empire, turning them into living, breathing zoos of a sort, long before London ever dreamed of its first chimpanzee. The scale of these royal gardens was astonishing. While our modern parks might cover acres, Persian imperial gardens could span square miles. They incorporated varied topography, from flat plains to gentle hills, integrated existing natural features, and crucially, always relied on meticulously engineered water systems. The Paradisa was a living tapestry of the empire's might and ingenuity. It served as a symbolic display of control over nature, demonstrating the emperor's ability to bend the elements to his will, much like he did with unruly tribes and rival kingdoms. Conquering a city is one thing, but making a desert bloom for centuries? That's truly impressive leverage. Historians still argue whether Cyrus personally oversaw the exact design of the Pasargadae garden, or if the credit belongs to brilliant but forgotten architects and engineers under his command. Nevertheless, it remains a definitive early example of the formalized Persian garden, embodying the principles of symmetry and internal division. The ruins at Pasargadae clearly show intersecting water channels and rectangular planting beds, a layout that would become iconic. These channels, usually paved, acted not just as irrigation conduits, but as elegant, reflective features, mirroring the sky and surrounding foliage, creating an ethereal quality that even 1,000 words can only begin to describe. Imagine the atmosphere in one of these vast royal parks. The air, far from the desert heat, is cooled by evaporative channels and dense tree cover. The scents would be intoxicating. A rich tapestry of blooming roses, jasmine, and citrus, mingled with the subtle, earthy perfume of wet soil. The soundscape would be dominated by the gentle burble of water, punctuated by the chirping of birds drawn to the lushness. You might see nobles reclining on rich carpets within open-sided pavilions, enjoying spiced wine and fresh fruits grown right there in the garden. This wasn't just a view. It was an immersive experience, a refuge from the constant demands of empire. No wonder kings wanted to live in them. They probably felt far less stressful than negotiating a trade deal in a dusty marketplace. These immense gardens weren't merely retreats, they were crucial for diplomacy and propaganda. A foreign envoy arriving at an imperial city might first be guided through the awe-inspiring gates of the royal park. This experience would instantly convey the immense wealth, sophistication, and power of the Persian Empire. Look, the garden would whisper, at what our emperor can command, not just armies, but nature itself. It was a gentle, beautiful flex, far more impressive than merely lining up all your soldiers for inspection. The sheer logistical challenge of constructing and maintaining these colossal spaces underscores their significance. Vast resources, human labour, rare plants, sophisticated engineering expertise were funneled into their creation. Rivers might be diverted, mountainsides tunnelled, and entire forests cultivated in locations previously considered barren. This required a monumental dedication to detail, something we still admire in the best landscape designs today, though hopefully modern project managers aren't cracking a whip to get the daisies planted correctly. In essence, the imperial gardens of figures like Cyrus were more than just personal paradises for the elite. They were living, breathing monuments to the Persian worldview, that order could be brought from chaos, that beauty could thrive in austerity, and that the ruler, through divine favour and human ingenuity, could bring forth an earthly reflection of cosmic perfection. They were symbols of peace and plenty, achieved through remarkable ambition and technological mastery. When you recall those ancient Persian kings, don't just think of mighty warriors, think of them as the ultimate horticulturists, cultivating not just flowers and fruit, but also a reputation for serenity and immense capability. So, you've envisioned the spiritual underpinnings and the monumental scale of these royal paradises. Now, let's get up close and personal. You're no longer just observing, you're in an ancient Persian paradisa right now. And as you fully immerse yourself, you'll realise it's a profound, multi-sensory experience designed to soothe every fibre of your being, drawing you into a state of deep tranquility. It's like a carefully curated spa day, ancient Persian style, only without the strange whale sounds or questionable face masks. First, the visual. You've already registered the dramatic contrast with the outside world. Within the garden, the eye finds harmony in symmetry and vivid colour. Imagine precise geometrical beds, usually rectangular or square, filled with an explosion of seasonal flowers, perhaps vibrant red tulips. Yes, they trace their origins back to Central Asia and Turkey, including Persia, fragrant pink roses, and deep purple irises. These aren't just randomly scattered, they are planted in deliberate patterns, creating intricate tapestries of living colour. Pathways, often made of fine gravel or decorative tiles, neatly divide these beds, guiding your gaze and your feet through a carefully composed landscape. It's a masterpiece of planning, far more intricate than just throwing some wildflower seeds around. Then, the auditory experience. This is crucial for relaxation. The omnipresent, gentle murmur of water is your constant companion. It's not a roaring waterfall or a crashing ocean, but the delicate trickle and splash of water in narrow channels, joy, and the soft gurgle of fountains. This specific sound signature is intentionally designed to evoke peace and the preciousness of water. Think of it as ancient white noise, the perfect accompaniment to quiet contemplation or a very restful afternoon nap. You might also hear the hum of bees, drawn to the abundance of blossoms, and the soft cooing of doves, a bird often associated with peace and featured in garden frescoes. The olfactory sensation is perhaps the most immersive. As you breathe deeply, the air is thick with intoxicating perfumes. Imagine the heady scent of jasmine vines trailing over trellises, mingling with the sweet aroma of ripening pomegranates, figs, and grapes. Rosewater was famously prized in Persia, and these gardens would have been flush with its source. Millions of rose petals gently wafting their perfume into the warm, still air. This wasn't just pretty. It was a deeply calming, almost therapeutic atmosphere. You can almost feel your shoulders drop, and your worries float away on that scented breeze. And no, these weren't artificially enhanced smells. Pure, natural aromatics, no candle with ancient sandalwood musk required. And of course, taste. While you might not be allowed to just pluck any fruit as a casual visitor, these gardens were rich with edible bounty. Luscious fruits, pomegranates, grapes, figs, citrus, would ripen in their season, offering sweet refreshment. Imagine biting into a juicy, sun-warmed fig straight from the branch, the juice dripping down your chin. It was sustenance and luxury, seamlessly combined. These edible delights reinforced the idea of a garden as a place of bounty and prosperity, a gift from the fertile earth. A quirky tidbit. Some historical accounts suggest that guests in certain royal gardens might be offered cooled fruit drinks flavoured with rosewater, prepared right there from the garden's produce. Finally, the tactile sense. Imagine the smooth, cool stone of a bench, or the cool, soft grass underfoot as you find a shaded spot. The subtle chill in the air from the evaporative cooling of the water channels contrasts with the warmth of the sun-dappled foliage. Perhaps you touch a soft, velvety rose petal or the rough bark of a cypress tree. These aren't wild, untamed surfaces, but generally refined ones, curated to be pleasant to the touch, reflecting the overall elegance of the space. This complete sensory immersion distinguishes the Persian garden from a simple patch of plants. It is a world unto itself, a perfectly choreographed experience designed to restore and rejuvenate. Every element, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, works in concert to transport you from the demands of the outside world into a bubble of serene contemplation. It's the ultimate digital detox that they didn't even know they needed. Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of these gardens was pure aesthetic pleasure, practical sustenance and hunting, or symbolic and spiritual reflection. It seems, perhaps, it was all of the above, blended so seamlessly that separating them would be missing the point. The point, undoubtedly, was comprehensive peace. As you conclude this multi-sensory stroll, reflect on how meticulously planned every aspect of this paradise truly is. It's a testament to the profound connection the ancient Persians felt with nature. not in its raw, wild form, but in its cultivated, harmonized state. They understood that true relaxation came not from a passive retreat, but from an active engagement with beauty and order, carefully arranged to bring peace to the soul. A stroll here is like a meditation in motion, a gentle invitation to let go of your worldly worries and simply be in the presence of cultivated perfection. Truly, a delightful place to lose track of time. As you savour the tranquil calm of the garden, perhaps seated beside a narrow water channel, listening to its gentle flow, a crucial question probably begins to bubble to the surface. Where on earth does all this life-giving water come from? We've just explored the sheer arid reality outside these paradise walls. And while the visual beauty and fragrant air might distract you, the fundamental secret to the Persian garden's very existence lies beneath your feet in an astonishingly clever feat of ancient engineering. The true unsung heroes of Persian garden longevity, and indeed of much of Persian civilization, are the qanats. Say that word to yourself, qanat pronounced nat. Imagine miles upon miles of underground aqueducts, literally tunnels dug deep beneath the desert surface, painstakingly bringing water from distant mountain aquifers to cities and farms. It's not just a quaint pipe, it's an entire subterranean highway for water operating entirely on gravity. Think of it like this. If your current smart home set up for automated watering sometimes clogs or glitches, these folks managed to build fully functional, self-sustaining plumbing networks for entire cities 2.5 millennia ago, and without Wi-Fi. Impressive, no? Here's how this ingenious system works. Imagine a line of gently sloping shafts leading downwards into the earth, looking from above like a series of interconnected wells marching across the landscape. The first shaft, typically located at a higher elevation, taps into an underground water-sourcean aquifer, often at the foot of a mountain range. From this mother well, a gently sloped underground tunnel is excavated, stretching for kilometres, sometimes dozens of kilometres, horizontally. This tunnel carries the groundwater steadily but surely towards lower-lying settlements, farms, and of course those glorious gardens. The key is the slope, incredibly slight, often just a few millimetres per metre, but consistent, ensuring a steady, constant flow without needing any external power source. This quiet, persistent movement is precisely what makes them so utterly dependable, even during long, hot summers, when surface rivers might dry up. The series of vertical shafts you might see from above, they serve several crucial purposes. They provide ventilation during the back-breaking excavation process, allowing fresh air to reach the tunnellers. They also serve as access points for maintenance, for removing excavated earth, and later for cleaning and repairing the qanat. It's a bit like digging an extremely long, slightly sloping mole tunnel, then putting helpful holes in the top every 20 feet so you can breathe. And yes, a great many moles were likely consulted on the original designs, though they were probably just given a small consultancy fee of excellent soil. The brilliance of the qanat system is its simplicity married with extreme sophistication. By keeping the water underground, it almost entirely avoids the catastrophic loss due to evaporation that would plague any surface canal in such a harsh climate. This means the water arrives at its destination cool, clean, and in remarkable quantities, ready to nourish not just crops for hungry people, but also the lush, demanding needs of those garden oases we've been exploring. It's the difference between trying to irrigate your garden with a watering can under a desert sun versus having a secret, constant flow right to your roots. A game changer, wouldn't you agree? Historians still argue whether the qanat system originated in the specific region of Persia, or if it was an idea that developed independently in various arid zones like parts of North Africa or Central Asia. However, the sheer scale and widespread adoption by the Achaemenid Persian Empire certainly solidifies their mastery and extensive deployment of this technology. It spread with their influence, and their engineering skills became legend. Imagine the complex calculations needed, mapping the geology, understanding water tables, and digging hundreds of meters underground with perfect gradient. The engineers of ancient Persia were truly unsung mathematical and geological geniuses. And let's not forget the mekanis, the actual well diggers, who passed down their highly specialized, often dangerous craft from generation to generation, performing a vital but little seen job. A quirky tidbit: mekanis would sometimes use lamps made from slow-burning oil or resin for light, creating a very eerie, flickering atmosphere in the tunnels, making their lonely, quiet work even more challenging. You could call it the world's first subterranean office job. And let me tell you, the commute wasn't fun. The economic and social impact of qanats was immense. They transformed unproductive arid land into fertile agricultural zones, supported large populations, and allowed cities to flourish far from natural rivers. For the imperial gardens, they meant a reliable, clean water supply for fountains, ponds, and planting beds year-round. This quiet miracle beneath the surface ensured that the visible paradise above remained just that, a paradise. It also gave rulers an incredible advantage, as water control equals life, prosperity, and power. Imagine trying to rebel against an emperor who controls your entire town's drinking water. A gentle word, and suddenly your tea time becomes a little less pleasant. So, the next time you pour yourself a glass of water, spare a thought for the anonymous mekanis who, over 2,000 years ago, dedicated their lives to digging these quiet lifelines through solid rock. They were the original silent providers of modern convenience, though theirs was certainly not convenient to achieve. It is through their tireless effort, coupled with brilliant hydrological insight, that you could, and can still today, walk through a lush Persian garden and be surrounded by cool, pure water, courtesy of the ancient underground. Their legacy is quiet, literally subterranean, but incredibly enduring, flowing through millennia. Having glimpsed the magnificent gardens above, and heard whispers of the ingenious qanats that fed them, your tranquil stroll now takes a fascinating, albeit slightly claustrophobic, turn. We must venture, in our mind's eye, into the depths of these underground water lifelines to truly appreciate the astonishing toil, the sheer human effort, and the sometimes peculiar dangers involved in building them. This was no gentle stroll in the park. This was serious, bone-wearying work. Imagine you are one of the mekanis, the specialized master well diggers. Your workplace is not the vast open desert, but a perpetually dim, often cold, and surprisingly quiet tunnel many feet below the Earth's surface. The first step was incredibly precise surveying. They didn't have GPS or advanced laser levels, but they understood geology and hydrogeology with astonishing intuition and accumulated experience. They'd identify a water-bearing layer, aquifer, at the foot of a mountain, often at a certain elevation, and then begin to dig a series of vertical access shafts downhill towards the intended destination, the thirsty city or flourishing garden. This meant precise calculations of slope, depth, and distance. Get the slope wrong, and your water either rushes too fast and erodes the tunnel, or worse, doesn't flow at all, and then you're stuck in a very long, expensive ditch. The digging itself was arduous. These tunnels could stretch for kilometers, sometimes dozens of kilometers. Remember, we're talking hand tools, pickaxes, shovels, and simple baskets for removing the excavated earth. The earth was hoisted up the vertical shafts by rope and pulley, often by labourers who spent their days doing nothing but hauling dirt up narrow, dusty holes. A quirky tidbit about this process is the mounds you still see tracing the lines of ancient qanats today in landscapes like those in Iran. Each mound marks a vertical shaft created by the piles of earth removed from below, like an archaeological dotted line stretching across the land, indicating where this invisible lifeline flows. These mounds can stretch as far as the eye can see, giving you a visual testament to the colossal undertaking. The Mechanis themselves were highly skilled and respected craftsmen, their knowledge passed down through generations. It was incredibly dangerous work. Imagine working in complete darkness, with minimal ventilation, hundreds of feet underground. Collapses were a constant threat. Sudden inflows of water could trap diggers, and lack of oxygen or poisonous gases, though rare, always a risk from pockets of methane, could be lethal. Historians still argue whether the Mechanis initially developed sophisticated surveying techniques purely by trial and error, or if basic geometric principles were implicitly understood from even earlier times and then honed. Regardless, their precision is breathtaking. They rarely got it wrong. Consider the dedication involved. These projects could take years, even decades, to complete. Generations of Mechanis might work on a single qanat system. It wasn't just a job. It was often a family calling. They spent their lives not under the broad, sun-baked Persian sky, but in the silent, damp embrace of the earth, slowly carving out arteries of life. They were true unsung heroes, delivering liquid gold to their people, literally. Think of the silent patience required, digging metre by metre, hour after hour, with the constant threat of danger lurking. If you think your commute is long, imagine digging your way to work, literally. The peculiar aspect of their work is the profound isolation. Picture a single Mechanis, perhaps alone in a section of the tunnel, with only the echoes of his own breathing and the scraping of his tools for company. Their existence was subterranean and mostly solitary, punctuated by visits to the access shafts to send up debris and receive supplies. It fostered a unique kind of meditative focus, or perhaps just drove them utterly bonkers. It's hard to tell without ancient therapy notes. But their collective result was this astonishing network, quietly performing its vital duty year after year, century after century. The qanat system didn't just supply water, it cooled it. By running through the Earth's relatively constant cool temperatures, the water delivered to the surface and into the garden was refreshingly cold, far more pleasant than stagnant pool water exposed to the desert sun. This passive cooling added yet another layer to the soothing quality of the Persian gardens, contributing to that sense of instant relief when stepping inside. Remember that cooling effect we talked about when you first entered the garden? Part of it came from this very secret, unseen infrastructure. The legacy of the qanat diggers is truly incredible. Some qanats dug thousands of years ago are still in use today, testament to their impeccable construction and foresight. This enduring engineering marvel quietly underpins not just agricultural life, but also our very ability to talk about these beautiful gardens. Without them, no water, no garden. Without them, ancient Persian life would have been profoundly different. So next time you appreciate the cooling effect of a garden stream, cast a mental nod to those dedicated Mechanis and their quiet, dangerous work beneath the soil. Their legacy of back-breaking, solitary labour ultimately brings peaceful contemplation and abundant beauty. It's a good reminder that often the greatest achievements are built on the unseen and unsung efforts of many. As the memory of the subterranean coolness of the qanat still lingers, your mind gently resurfaces into the luminous beauty of the Persian garden. Now, with the essential water supply accounted for, you can fully appreciate the true brilliance of its design. Because what you are seeing isn't just a collection of plants and channels, it is a meticulously crafted geometric blueprint, a living mandala that became one of the most enduring legacies of Persian artistry and philosophy. We are talking about the Chahar Bagh, pronounced Chahar Bagh. The name itself, Chahar Bagh, simply translates to 4 gardens or 4 divisions. And once you grasp its concept, you'll start seeing its echoes everywhere, not just in other Persian gardens, but in garden design across the world, influencing everything from the Taj Mahal's surroundings to even modern city parks. The essence of the Chahar Bagh is its simple, elegant symmetry. Imagine a central point, often a pavilion or a large tranquil pool, from which two primary axes extend at right angles, dividing the entire garden space into four distinct, perfectly symmetrical quadrants. Think of it as a cosmic crossroads, right in the middle of your perfectly curated green space. It's like designing a super satisfyingly precise tic-tac-toe board, only instead of noughts and crosses, you have fountains and fig trees. These axes weren't just invisible lines on a map. They were usually manifested as pathways, and, crucially, water channels. So, the cool water we discussed, lovingly delivered by those underground qanats, now takes its proper, visible place, flowing purposefully along these precise axes. These main channels create reflective surfaces that catch the light, adding a shimmering, dynamic element to the static design. They also served the practical purpose of distributing water evenly to all four quadrants, ensuring no thirsty rosebush was left behind. Practicality meets purity meets profound philosophy. A mainstream historical fact here is that this specific quadrangular layout, while perhaps having earlier functional roots in irrigation, definitively emerged as an aesthetic and symbolic cornerstone of Persian garden design by the Achaemenid period, perfecting a design that would later influence Islamic and European garden traditions for centuries. But the Chahar Bagh is more than just good plumbing and pretty pathways. It's a microcosm of the Zoroastrian worldview we touched upon earlier. Many scholars believe the four quadrants represent the four elements: earth, air, fire, sun, water, or perhaps the four cardinal directions, united at a harmonious centre. This creates a sense of profound order and balance, a mirror of cosmic perfection brought down to a human scale. It wasn't just pleasing to the eye, it was intended to soothe the soul, to reinforce the idea that humanity, through right action, could bring order and beauty to the world, reflecting the divine plan. It's certainly more uplifting than thinking about the latest social media argument, isn't it? The smaller details within each of the four sections would then adhere to this overarching geometry. Within each quadrant, smaller, meticulously arranged beds might be laid out in further subquadrants or repeating patterns, creating a mesmerizing fractal-like quality. Imagine rows of vibrant flowers, precise lines of cypress trees reaching for the sky, symbols of immortality in Persian culture, by the way, and fruit trees heavy with their bounty, all arranged with almost mathematical precision. It is order applied to nature, taming the wild growth into an aesthetic of deliberate contemplation. It allows your eyes to wander, and yet always return to that perfect, harmonious centre. A quirky tidbit is how even the exact sound of the water was often considered part of the design. The gentle gradient and varying depths of the dewy water channels could create different subtle sounds. A gentle burble, a soft ripple, a tiny splash, almost like a carefully composed piece of ambient music accompanying your quiet contemplation. It was auditory landscaping, centuries before lo-fi beats to relax, study 2 became a thing. They understood the power of a good soundscape for inducing calm long before anyone invented a smartphone or a noise-cancelling headphone. Historians still argue whether the Chahar Bagh design evolved primarily from pragmatic necessities for irrigation and orchard management, or if its philosophical and symbolic meaning as a representation of a divinely ordered universe was the initial driving force. It's probably a blend of both, but its deliberate implementation as an ideal pattern strongly suggests that its meaning and symbolism were deeply important. Regardless of its exact genesis, the geometric purity offers both a sense of structure and an openness for contemplative thought, guiding the eye and mind. It doesn't scream at you, it whispers, quietly suggesting perfection. The pathways between these quadrants weren't merely utilitarian, they were part of the experience. They invited leisurely strolls, moments of rest in shaded nooks, or conversation in a central pavilion where the gentle sounds of water would provide a serene backdrop, These gardens were places for human interaction, for royal decrees, for poetic recitation, or simply for escaping the pressures of court life and engaging in private reflection. Imagine sitting on a cool marble bench, gazing down one of these avenues, lined with trees and flowering shrubs, perhaps catching the scent of fresh mint planted along the edge of the channel. Absolute bliss. The endurance of the Chahar Bagh model is astonishing. As the Persian Empire expanded, and later empires adopted its administrative and artistic traditions, so too did this garden layout spread. It was exported with cultural influence, seen in places like Spain, in Moorish gardens, India, most notably in Mughal architecture, and even aspects of Italian Renaissance gardens show hints of its structured order. The design, simple yet profound, seemed to resonate universally as a model for creating earthly perfection, a vision of paradise within walls. So, as you rest your eyes upon the orderly beauty of the Chahar Bagh, remember that it's more than just pleasing symmetry. It's a deeply meaningful arrangement of space, water, and plants, born from a profound respect for nature and a philosophical vision of a harmonious cosmos. It's the Persian genius, meticulously laid out, inviting you to find your own peace within its quiet, geometric perfection. As your gaze travels across the geometrically perfect quadrants of the Chahar Bagh, the beauty isn't just in the orderly layout itself, but in the vibrant, fragrant elements that fill each precise bed. These gardens weren't just about water and structure, they were about life, expressed through a rich tapestry of flowers, fruit-bearing trees, and symbolic plants. To walk here is to be surrounded by living abundance, carefully chosen and cultivated for both pleasure and profound meaning. Imagine first the explosion of colour and fragrance that would hit you, especially in spring. The air is thick with the scent of roses, perhaps the most iconic flower of Persian gardens. Not just any roses, but ancient varieties of Rosa, Gallica, and others, renowned for their intense perfume and rich hues from soft pinks to deep crimson. They weren't merely decorative. Roses were integral to Persian culture, inspiring poetry, featuring in festivals, and used to make prized rosewater for food, drink, and perfume. A peculiar tidbit: while today we think of massive, showy, modern hybrids, the ancient roses were smaller, more delicate, but possessed an intoxicating, pervasive aroma that modern varieties often lack. They were literally perfume factories, in plant form. But it wasn't just roses. Picture fragrant jasmine, its star-shaped blossoms twining elegantly over trellises, their sweet scent a natural evening complement. There might be rows of lilies, vibrant irises, their blue hues often mirroring the pools, and the stately, slender forms of cypress trees. These aren't just random plantings. Every species was chosen for its beauty, its fragrance, its fruit, or its symbolic meaning within the Persian worldview. The cypress tree, with its tall, dark, and often slender silhouette, was a particular favourite, symbolising immortality, grace, and life after death. They provided both vital shade and a strong vertical element that emphasised the garden's structural precision. Imagine walking down an avenue flanked by these ancient, solemn sentinels, guiding your eyes towards the central pavilion or a distant fountain. It's a serene, dignified presence, a silent witness to millennia. Then there's the fruit, so vital to the bounty of paradise. Imagine trees laden with glistening red pomegranates, bursting with juicy seeds. Pomegranates held a special place, often symbolising fertility, abundance, and prosperity. Figs, with their broad leaves and sweet, succulent fruit, were another common sight, as were grapes, which would have climbed gracefully over pergolas, offering shade and succulent clusters in season. Citrus trees, with their bright green leaves and intensely fragrant blossoms, would also have provided pops of colour and delightful perfume, not to mention a refreshing, if slightly bitter, juice for royal beverages. A mainstream historical fact is that many fruit varieties, now common globally, like pistachios, almonds, apricots, and peaches, trace their cultivation history back to Persia and Central Asia, disseminated westward, along ancient trade routes. The gardens were, in essence, living seed banks and agricultural research centres long before anyone had coined the phrase. These plants weren't just beautiful, they also served practical purposes. Many provided edible fruits, herbs for cooking and medicine, and flowers for dyes or perfumes. They transformed barren land into productive, self-sustaining oases, fulfilling the Zoroastrian ideal of bringing life and order to the world. It's like getting a gourmet grocery store and a full-service aromatherapy salon all in one delightful outdoor space. And it smelled significantly better than your local supermarket produce section, let's be honest. Even specific weeds or grasses were sometimes tolerated or encouraged in specific spots for texture or aroma. The goal wasn't just pure manicured neatness, but a flourishing natural balance within an ordered framework. You might find wild thyme growing between paving stones, releasing its spicy aroma when trod upon, adding another layer to the sensory tapestry. Historians still argue whether the primary selection criteria for plants were strictly practical, food, shade, medicine, or overwhelmingly symbolic pomegranates for fertility, cypress for immortality. It's likely a rich blend of both. Practicality dictated that food sources were crucial for such large populations, but the overlay of symbolic meaning undoubtedly enhanced the garden's spiritual and cultural significance. The very act of planting, cultivating, and nurturing these specific species became a testament to a worldview where the earth was a sacred, living entity to be cherished. So, as you breathe in the mingled perfumes, and let your eyes linger on the vibrant colours, know that every flower, every tree, every fruitful vine in these ancient Persian gardens tells a story of bounty against adversity, of spiritual connection, and of the enduring human desire to cultivate beauty and meaning from the very earth beneath our feet. It's a gentle, living narrative designed to bring tranquility to all who walk among its intentional growth, and yes, probably provide an excellent afternoon snack. As you immerse yourself more deeply within the meticulously cultivated plant life, something begins to stir amidst the blossoms, a delicate flutter of wings, a flash of vibrant feathers, a subtle rustling in the leaves. Persian gardens weren't just havens for plants, they were sanctuaries for wildlife, attracting birds, insects and other creatures, further enhancing the tranquil, life-affirming atmosphere. Remember, this isn't some sterilized modern botanic garden, this is a functioning ecosystem. Picture the scene: brightly coloured songbirds flitting among the fruit trees, their cheerful melodies punctuating the quiet gurgle of the water channels. These might include bulbuls, often featured in Persian poetry, nightingales with their melancholic serenades, and perhaps even peacocks strutting with iridescent pride around the pavilions. It would have created a vibrant soundscape, as diverse as the plant life. The birds would not only have been beautiful to watch and listen to, but they played a practical role, helping to control insect populations and pollinate blossoms naturally. So they weren't just lovely decorations, they were miniature avian gardeners too. Bees would also have buzzed actively among the flowering plants, essential pollinators transferring pollen from bloom to bloom. Hives might even have been intentionally placed to maximize honey production, a sweet delicacy much prized in the ancient world, and to encourage the general health and proliferation of blossoms within the garden. Bees and gardens go hand in hand, from ancient Persia to your neighbourhood vegetable patch. A fascinating, almost fringe tidbit is the role of animals that perhaps weren't invited. Some sources mention gardeners actively trapping and relocating pest species that might damage fruit trees or delicate flowers. Squirrels and larger rodents probably proved pesky, though adorable, in raiding crops, requiring inventive trapping strategies, presumably more humane than modern poisons. Other animals were welcomed, of course. Fish would often populate the ponds and channels, providing a serene visual element and controlling algae, as long as the local herons or kingfishers didn't help themselves to an unplanned aquatic buffet. These garden sanctuaries weren't just refuges for birds and insects. Larger animals, even slightly exotic species, could sometimes be found. Deer, gazelles, and rabbits might have roamed freely within larger, walled paradisos, the vast hunting reserves surrounding imperial palaces. Imagine walking among the carefully cultivated flowers, then suddenly spotting a graceful gazelle darting between the trees. That adds a touch of true wilderness to even the most organized formal setting. Not exactly petting zoo material, but fascinating to behold, certainly. A mainstream historical fact is the tradition of ancient Persian nobility to maintain large paradisos for royal hunts. While these were, undeniably, for sport, they also contributed to conservation efforts, protecting habitat for wild species amidst increasing human encroachment on natural lands. They functioned as ancient national parks of a sort. It might be difficult to tell fact from folklore now, but stories persisted for generations about these ancient gardens, their role and inhabitants, blending reality and myth in complex ways, like many places of refuge. Historians still argue whether the emphasis on certain charismatic megafauna, lions, tigers, even the occasional elephant, in historical descriptions, is evidence of actual exotic animal collections or largely embellished symbolism. Given the vastness of the Achaemenid Empire, encompassing regions stretching to India and Africa, importing and keeping a variety of animals undoubtedly happened on some level, even if highly impractical. Imagine what the emperor demanded for his birthday. More than just rosewater, I can assure you. The carefully created habitat was essential for many species to thrive. Constant access to water, consistent food sources, and ample shelter ensured these gardens functioned as miniature, human-managed ecosystems. A model, in many ways, of modern sustainable design practices long before those were trendy buzzwords. It wasn't just about aesthetic appearance, but the broader ecological picture. The birds helped control pests, bees pollinated flowers, and animals fertilized the soil. It's an intricately balanced system, sustained through intelligent design. Even an empire depends on more than manpower. It requires well-tended gardens, balanced ecosystems, and careful water control. This vibrant presence of wildlife served a deep purpose, far beyond mere decorative interest. It reinforced the impression that the garden was not merely a place of artificial construction, but a space pulsating with genuine, untamed life. A space where nature, carefully channeled, found equilibrium and abundance. So, as you meander here, admire not only the hand of the gardener, but the delicate interdependence between human design and the animal kingdom. Here, art and nature have found a common sanctuary where the very best of human intention invites all the life, big and small, to truly flourish. Even the uninvited species contribute something. As one astute old Zen proverb, not exactly ancient Persian, I'm sorry to confess, reminds us, even mud enriches the lotus. And so too can even the most bothersome marmot contribute in his own small way, as long as you don't let him start tunnelling near your precious underground aqueducts. Having appreciated the plants and peaceful inhabitants of the garden, let's consider for a moment what the humans were actually doing in these spaces, beyond just strolling and contemplating. For the ancient Persian elite, their grand gardens weren't just beautiful vistas to be admired from afar. They were dynamic, living extensions of their residences, meticulously designed for living. Imagine stepping out of your private chambers directly into a verdant outdoor salon tailored perfectly for relaxation, entertainment, and even strategic discussion. You might envision royalty and nobles lounging on exquisitely patterned rugs and cushions within open-sided pavilions, kushks, strategically placed within the garden. These pavilions were often open to the refreshing breezes that swept through the gardens, acting as natural cooling centres, drawing air over the water features to create an evaporative cooling effect. Here, protected from the harsh sun, yet fully immersed in the beauty, ancient Persians would unwind, away from the stuffiness of interior halls. This was their chill-out zone. Centuries before beanbags and low-key lighting became a thing, they likely served fine wines, made from the garden's own grapes, and offered fresh fruits, plucked just moments before. It sounds far better than your typical Monday morning office meeting, doesn't it? Unless your office has freshly pressed pomegranate juice and fragrant jasmine blossoms. Leisure activities would have been plentiful. Intellectual discourse was prized, and gardens provided the perfect, serene setting for philosophical discussions among scholars and poets. Imagine the murmur of thoughtful conversation drifting over the soft burble of a fountain, verses recited under the dappled shade of a cypress tree. These gardens were places for creative inspiration and quiet learning. A fascinating, quirky tidbit. Some sources suggest that debates and poetic contests might even have taken place here, with the garden's beauty itself serving as muse or background. Lose a debate, and at least you had a beautiful view to console yourself. For royal families, particularly, the gardens served as private sanctuaries away from the pressures of ruling. Queen Esther's, Shahrazad's, and countless unnamed empresses would have found solace here. Women of the royal court would spend much of their time within these secure, beautiful walls, strolling among the flowers, gossiping quietly, or simply enjoying moments of tranquil peace. The Anderun, women's quarters of Persian palaces, were often directly integrated into a garden space, ensuring a private, restorative environment. This highlights the garden's role, not just as a display of power, but as a practical, luxurious retreat for the innermost circle of society. Beyond simple relaxation, these spaces could also host banquets and lavish receptions, transforming from serene retreats to vibrant party venues. Imagine a late afternoon banquet as the golden light fades, torches illuminate the pathways, and musicians fill the air with gentle melodies, all under the starry desert sky. The food, of course, would largely come from the garden itself, fruits, herbs, and perhaps even smaller game caught from the royal hunting preserves we discussed. This allowed for seamless transitions between solemn private reflection and grand public entertainment. Historians still argue whether the privacy afforded by the garden walls was solely for elite exclusivity and status, or if there was a deeper cultural or religious need for such protected and introspective spaces for rulers and their inner circle. It's likely both, a blend of pragmatic needs for security and a philosophical desire for a controlled, orderly environment where one could commune with both nature and oneself. You simply can't do that when a parade of commoners is wandering through your carefully cultivated petunias. Even matters of state and diplomacy could take place in these serene surroundings. An emperor might receive foreign dignitaries in a garden pavilion, allowing the splendour of the cultivated landscape to subtly impress upon his guests the wealth, refinement, and ordered power of his empire, all without having to boast. After a long journey across the desert, seeing such an incredible oasis would have been a profoundly impressive and welcoming sight, softening even the sternest negotiating posture. It's hard to be too grumpy about diplomatic negotiations when you're being plied with fresh fruit and surrounded by sweet-scented blossoms, right? Ultimately, these Persian gardens were living embodiments of lifestyle, places where the boundaries between inside and outside, private and public, natural and architectural, often blurred. They facilitated not just physical relaxation, but mental and spiritual rejuvenation. The sounds, the scents, the sheer beauty, all conspired to calm the mind and encourage a state of reflective peace. So, as you envision the life lived within these ancient botanical wonders, realize that they were designed to cradle not just nature, but humanity, allowing both to flourish in harmony and gentle splendor. a perfect place for the powerful to put their feet up, or for poets to quietly drift into peaceful slumber after a long day of rhyming. You've absorbed the intimate beauty of a Persian garden, and how it cradled ancient life. Now, broaden your gaze. That meticulous geometric planning, those tranquil water features, that philosophy of nature imbalanced these ideas didn't remain confined behind the walls of Persian empires. Instead, like a gentle ripple expanding across a calm pool, Persian garden design radiated outwards, profoundly influencing garden traditions across vast continents and millennia. It's truly amazing how a good idea can travel, particularly when it comes wrapped in beauty and serenity. Consider first its undeniable impact on Islamic garden traditions. As Islam expanded from the Arabian Peninsula, it encountered and often absorbed existing sophisticated cultures, including the Persian. The Paradise Garden, rooted in Zoroastrian and later Persian beliefs, found a natural resonance with the Quranic description of paradise, Jannah, as a lush, water-filled oasis, brimming with fruits and shade, a reward for the righteous. The image of gardens beneath which rivers flow in the Quran provided a powerful theological impetus to continue and evolve the Persian garden blueprint. So, mainstream historical fact. The Chahar Bagh design, with its central pool and four-part division, became a canonical form for Islamic gardens, found in everything from palatial courtyards to mosque complexes, from North Africa to Mughal India. Perhaps the most famous examples of this cross-cultural fertilization are the glorious gardens of Moorish Spain and Mughal India. Think of the Generalife at the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. Its precise layout, serene courtyards, and enchanting water features immediately echo the Persian paradisa. Even today, when you walk through its cool pathways, you feel that ancient, carefully cultivated peace, just with a distinctly Iberian twist. It's like finding your favourite comfortable armchair has migrated across the continent, slightly reupholstered, but still perfectly comforting. And then move to India, where the Mughal emperors, descendants of Timur and through him, a lineage linked back to Central Asian traditions that absorbed much from Persia, adopted the Chahar Bagh with astonishing fidelity. The gardens of the Taj Mahal are a textbook example. They are laid out with absolute mathematical precision, divided into 4 large squares by water channels and pathways leading to the central mausoleum itself. The very symbol of romantic devotion in India, the Taj, stands in a garden that is fundamentally Persian in its conceptual structure. A quirky tidbit: the emphasis on fruit trees within these gardens often combined pragmatic sustenance with a subtle nod to imperial benevolence, providing food for those within and for the local populace during periods of visitation or religious holidays. But the influence wasn't limited to Islamic lands. While not always directly credited, subtle ripples of Persian aesthetic and engineering know-how can be found elsewhere. Elements like axial planning, formal canals, and the integration of water as both a decorative and practical feature found their way into European garden design during the Renaissance. When European designers started looking beyond medieval monastic gardens towards more structured, classical models, they unwittingly or wittingly borrowed principles refined over millennia in Persia. While distinct in style, the French formal garden, like Versailles with its geometric canals and symmetrical beds, and even some English gardens, show a distant kinship with Persian principles of ordered nature. Historians still argue whether this cross-cultural borrowing was a direct result of increased trade and scholarly exchange, or simply parallel evolution based on universal aesthetic and practical considerations for creating impressive and soothing outdoor spaces. Perhaps some concepts are just universally good, regardless of geographical origin, particularly when it comes to cooling off in the heat. Even modern urban planning and landscape architecture unconsciously draw on these ancient ideas. The concept of creating green lunges in cities, structured parks with defined paths and water features for relaxation and public enjoyment, shares a lineage with the very first enclosed paradises. From New York's Central Park to modern public gardens designed for quiet contemplation, the principles of channeling water, organizing plants, and creating a sensory retreat in a bustling world echo the whispers of ancient Persian foresight. You could argue that every carefully managed pond or symmetrically arranged flower bed in a city park owes a distant debt to the Chahar Bagh. So, when you see a well-manicured garden, particularly one that utilizes water in an elegant, reflective way, or has a structured, almost mathematical layout, consider the quiet, ancient legacy underpinning its beauty. It's a testament to the power of a foundational concept so perfectly realized that it continues to resonate and adapt, bringing beauty and tranquility to countless generations and cultures far beyond its original arid homeland. From the grand imperial residences of Persepolis to the humble urban park, the silent influence of ancient Persian garden wisdom continues to bloom. A remarkably persistent seed of beauty, carefully tended for thousands of years. As you consider the far-reaching influence of Persian garden design, let's bring our focus back to the homeland and explore how the very architecture of palaces and residences became intrinsically woven into these green tapestries. For the ancient Persians, the distinction between a building and its surrounding garden was often blurred. It wasn't merely a palace with a garden, it was a complex where structure and nature became an inseparable, seamless whole, each enhancing the other in a truly harmonious way. Imagine your house melting subtly into a paradise, making it impossible to tell where the walls end and the rose bushes begin. This concept of integration is a mainstream historical fact. Persian architects routinely designed palaces, particularly those of the Achaemenid era and later Islamic periods, to directly open onto or incorporate garden spaces. Large verandas, porticos, and open-sided pavilions, kushks, acted as transitional zones, drawing the garden's refreshing coolness, fragrant air, and soothing visual beauty directly into the living spaces. These were not just elaborate porches, they were carefully engineered interfaces between the built and natural environments. You wouldn't simply view the garden, you'd inhabit it, even when indoors. Think of the ruins of Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire. While less garden-focused than Pasargadae, the monumental staircases and audience halls hint at outdoor processes, perhaps incorporating garden processions or outdoor receptions that melded with the architecture. Later, during the Islamic periods in Persia, the integration became even more pronounced. Consider structures like the Chehel Sotown, 40 columns palace, in Isfahan, built centuries later but embodying the ancient spirit. Its magnificent hall, fronted by a large colonnade, opens onto a vast pool which reflects the palace itself and the surrounding garden. The reflection makes the building seem to float amidst water and greenery, literally marrying the two elements. It's like creating a permanent, natural air conditioner with a stunning mirror effect, perfect for narcissists who also appreciate gentle breezes. The careful positioning of windows and open arcades allowed cross-ventilation, often funneling those garden-scented breezes through the palace interiors. The thermal mass of thick mud brick or stone walls would keep the interiors cool during the day, releasing that coolness slowly as the sun set, making for comfortable evenings even in the hottest climates. Add to that the evaporative cooling from strategically placed internal pools and fountains within palace courtyards, and you had ancient natural climate control at its finest. They were creating indoor gardens before indoor plants were even a fad. A peculiar tidbit from descriptions of certain ancient residences mentions wind catchers, bad gear, an early form of ventilation tower, integrated into the architecture. These would naturally channel cooler, circulating air from below ground, sometimes via tunnels, or from shaded courtyards directly into the palace rooms. Combine that with a lush garden providing constant shade and a moist microclimate, and you realize these palaces weren't just opulent, they were profoundly clever responses to climate, built around the garden's calming embrace. No air conditioning needed, just architectural genius and a good appreciation for fluid dynamics. Historians still argue whether the functional aspects of these integrations, cooling, shade, fresh air, were the primary drivers for blending architecture with nature, or if the aesthetic and symbolic unity, creating a unified paradise environment for the ruler, held greater sway. It was undoubtedly a symbiotic relationship. Practical comfort made the spaces enjoyable, and the beauty provided aesthetic and spiritual upliftment. They were both engineering feats and living works of art. It speaks to a profound understanding of human well-being. Who needs a white noise machine when you have actual gentle water flowing through your living room, artfully arranged, not via a leaky faucet? This seamless blending of architecture and garden allowed the palace to be an organic part of its surroundings, rather than a jarring imposition on the landscape. Pavilions became vantage points to appreciate the wider garden vista. Water channels often flowed directly into reception halls or private quarters, blurring the distinction between indoors and out, enriching the interior with the sound and visual beauty of flowing water. Courtyards were themselves meticulously laid out gardens, forming private paradises within the larger structures. The meticulous thought put into lighting was also remarkable. Large windows and open sections weren't just for ventilation. They allowed natural light to play over the interior, bringing the vibrancy of the garden's colours indoors. The reflected light from pools and fountains would dance on the ceilings, creating a serene, shifting display, mimicking the play of sunlight through foliage outside. It truly made the buildings feel alive, intimately connected to the cycle of nature that blossomed right at their doorstep. In essence, these ancient Persian palace gardens weren't just houses next to pretty lawns. They were holistic environments designed for holistic living, where every breath, every glance, every moment was infused with the serenity of the meticulously cultivated nature around them. They epitomized the ultimate fusion of form and function, building and botanical, all crafted to invite you into a perpetual state of peaceful contemplation, a permanent and profoundly calming embrace. And in a busy, hot empire, who wouldn't want to live in their own perfectly air-conditioned, naturally fragranced, beautifully curated little piece of quiet perfection? We've admired the lush beauty above ground, understood the hidden wonders below, and even experienced the architecture's harmonious blend with nature. But, for all their apparent serenity, these ancient Persian gardens weren't effortless masterpieces. They demanded immense and sustained human effort. Realizing this effort isn't meant to disrupt your tranquil mood, but rather to deepen your appreciation for what was truly an extraordinary feat of endurance, ingenuity, and dedication. Maintaining paradise, it turns out, was surprisingly hard work. Imagine the constant battle against the elements in an arid region. The relentless sun, the occasional dust storm, and the ever-present challenge of managing water demanded vigilance. These were not plant-it-and-forget-it gardens. Every channel had to be regularly cleared of silt and debris to ensure unimpeded flow. Every qanat tunnel required periodic inspection and maintenance. Remember those quiet, dangerous journeys underground by the Mukhanes? They weren't just for initial construction, they were for continuous upkeep. If a segment collapsed, or a section became clogged, the lifeblood of the garden was immediately threatened. This wasn't a matter of forgetting to water your petunias for a day, it was the potential ruin of an entire ecosystem. Then there's the horticultural aspect. Keeping those precise rows of roses, those thriving fruit trees, and those perfect cypress avenues wasn't something a single person could casually achieve. It required teams of dedicated gardeners and skilled horticulturalists. These experts knew how to prune to encourage abundant flowering and fruiting, how to manage soil health, and how to identify and treat plant diseases. Imagine a modern estate with its acres of carefully managed landscaping. These ancient gardens demanded even more, given the lack of industrial equipment or chemical shortcuts. They had to rely on manual labour, ancient knowledge, and keen observation. A quirky tidbit: some sources suggest specific methods of attracting beneficial insects, like ladybugs, to naturally control pests, showcasing an early understanding of integrated pest management. They were, in essence, the original organic gardeners, by necessity rather than modern fashion. Weeding was an unending task. Keeping those meticulously tidy beds free from competing wild plants in a climate prone to rapid growth after any rainfall or irrigation was a full-time job. Planting new seedlings, transplanting mature trees, and replacing faded annuals would have been continuous, cyclical activities, keeping the gardens in perpetual bloom or fruitful splendour. It wasn't about minimal maintenance, it was about maximal output of beauty and bounty through diligent labour. You probably have a lawnmower today, but imagine keeping several acres pristine with just shears and a scythe. Not exactly a walk in the park. A mainstream historical fact here is the significant amount of resources, both human and financial, that Persian empires poured into maintaining their imperial gardens. These were not just luxuries, but symbols of power and legitimacy. Neglecting a royal garden would be akin to allowing your defensive walls to crumble. It suggested weakness and a decline in prosperity. Therefore, ensuring a continuous supply of water and dedicated, skilled labour was a strategic imperative for rulers. Entire administrative departments might have been dedicated to overseeing the qanat networks and garden staffs. Historians still argue whether the skilled labourers in these imperial gardens were primarily enslaved individuals, free wage earners, or specialised artisans granted a unique social status. It was likely a mixture, varying by region and period. However, regardless of their social standing, their labour was essential and constant, underscoring that the vision of paradise came at a significant human cost. The beauty that invited such profound tranquility for the elite was built and maintained by relentless, methodical work. This diligent maintenance allowed the gardens to truly endure across centuries, evolving slowly but consistently, providing beauty and bounty. Think of the continuity required, the passing down of knowledge, the careful mapping of underground water channels, the observation of plant cycles. It was a multi-generational commitment, requiring an almost obsessive dedication to preserving these fragile oases against the overwhelming odds of the desert. So as your serene mental journey through these gardens approaches its end, hold on to the feeling of calm, but allow yourself a moment to respect the countless hands that tilled the soil, hauled the earth, cleaned the channels, and pruned the roses. The beauty of these ancient Persian gardens wasn't just a gift from nature or divine inspiration. It was a profound testament to the enduring power of human effort, diligently applied to bring forth and continuously sustain a little piece of meticulously managed paradise on earth. It's the kind of maintenance schedule that makes your modern lawn care look like a delightful hobby rather than an essential, empire-sustaining duty. And so, your tranquil journey through the verdant oases of ancient Persia slowly begins to wind down. You've walked among the cypress trees, listened to the murmur of qanat-fed streams, inhaled the heady fragrance of roses and jasmine, and seen the meticulously organised Chahar Bagh unfold before your eyes. You've imagined the lives lived within these peaceful enclosures, and recognised the monumental, often hidden, human effort required to create and sustain them. Now, let's bring it full circle, reflecting on how these remarkable spaces continue to touch our lives, subtly but powerfully, even thousands of years later. The legacy of the ancient Persian gardens extends far beyond mere architectural influence. It's woven into our very concept of paradise, Remember how that word peridizer literally meant walled enclosure or orchard? It was their practical, physical attempt to create a perfect space on Earth. This fundamental idea of a lush, protected haven permeated cultures far and wide, influencing not just subsequent Islamic and European garden designs, but our collective unconscious dreamscapes of heaven and ideal environments. A mainstream historical fact is the direct linguistic lineage of our word paradise from this ancient Persian term, underscoring the deep impact of their cultural output on Western thought and language. Even if you've never heard of a qanat or a Chahar Bagh before tonight, chances are you've appreciated elements that find their origins in this ancient tradition. Think of the symmetrical park in your city, the sound of a decorative fountain in a courtyard, or the sheer calm derived from a walk in a beautifully maintained green space. That underlying order, that thoughtful integration of water and plants for human repose, all echo those quiet gardens on the arid Persian plateau. We are still, in many ways, looking for our own small walled enclosures where we can find peace and escape the daily grind. It's just that now we call it taking a walk in the park or meditating by a water feature rather than engaging in profound religious cultivation. Same soothing effect, just different vocabulary. A peculiar tidbit. While concrete gardens are rare today, some ancient Persian texts refer to the occasional rock garden within larger estates, mimicking mountainous terrains, perhaps hinting at a longing for wilder, more uncultivated beauty even within the strictly controlled garden landscape. It speaks to a multifaceted appreciation for nature, not just its perfected forms. Historians still argue whether such rock gardens were merely utilitarian, dealing with difficult terrain, or held deeper philosophical significance related to rugged wilderness versus cultivated order. It's likely a beautiful contradiction that resonates across cultures, this tension between wild beauty and disciplined artistry. The ancient Persian ideal wasn't about dominating nature with brute force, but rather about cooperating with it, coaxing out its inherent beauty through thoughtful design and sustainable practices. The long-lived qanat systems are testament to an environmental sensibility that was far ahead of its time, providing clean, cool water without requiring fossil fuels or massive power consumption. They understood centuries ago that harmony with nature wasn't just poetic, it was practical for survival and well-being. So, as you allow your thoughts to drift and soften, recall the sensory delights of the Persian garden, the coolness against your skin, the subtle fragrances on the breeze, the soft murmur of flowing water. These were places designed to restore the soul, to quiet the mind, and to remind humanity of its potential for creating beauty and order, even in the most challenging of landscapes. They were a refuge, a mirror of cosmic order, and a deeply felt, practical response to living in an often unforgiving world. These quiet havens weren't just for powerful kings. They represented an ideal that everyone could aspire to, even on a smaller scale, reflecting the enduring human desire for tranquility, for beauty, and for a deep connection with the natural world. They taught humanity, long ago, that sometimes the most profound peace can be found within the careful boundaries of a well-tended garden, where water always flows, and flowers perpetually bloom, whispering stories of ancient ingenuity and timeless calm. Let those murmuring water channels become a lullaby, washing over your thoughts, soothing away any remaining stresses from your day. Imagine yourself nestled in a cool, shaded corner of one of these timeless gardens, feeling the gentle breeze, smelling the distant jasmine. The sounds soften, the light fades to a gentle dusk, and the ancient wisdom of balance and tranquility surrounds you. Let the rhythm of the water carry you now. The garden is here. You are safe. And all is quiet. Slowly, perfectly quiet. Just relax, breathe, and drift.